there are readers all over the world, so you can use Google Translator or something else. And here's my LinkedIn profile as well. I have no many hobbies, but what I like to do, I like to run. And this is me yesterday having a short run in beautiful Tirana. And I really love the weather you have here, because here I'm running back in home in Finland. So it's a little bit different, but yeah, I like that weather as well. All right, now we can start. I have divided this session in two parts. First, I go through a few things from the maker / citizen developer / developer point of view, and then after that, a few things from more IT point of view. So let's start, and let's start with maker and Power Apps. First thing, what everybody should know is this implicitly shared connection. And this is old thing. There was, back in days, few connectors that always was implicitly shared, and you can't do that anymore. But if you have been working with this platform like a few years, it might be that you still have those on somewhere, so that's the reason why you should know what these are. And shortly, what these implicit shared connections are and why they are harmful is that, for example, here in this example, and the thing is that the most common connection that has been shared by implicitly is this Azure SQL. So here in this example, I have done Canvas Power Apps that is using Azure SQL as a database. And back in days, only way I could connect to the Azure SQL was to use that SQL connection. And with the connection, I need to use SQL on username and login. And then I have did this app, and then I share the app to the user. And now, what happens is that I actually shared that connection, that my connection, with the SQL login to the user. And because all this happens here in default environment, it means that this user is also maker in that environment, so the user can create new Canvas Power Apps, and he can access that same SQL database with using that same connection I have shared with them. And why this is quite dangerous is that, for example, if I have made this my first Canvas apps, like for just viewing from the employee database my own data, now this user here can, with his own app, can read all the employees' data here. And even better, if the SQL login has a little bit too much permissions to the SQL database, user can modify and delete items as well. And even better, if this is super graphities who has been configured the permissions, it might be that this SQL login has permissions to different SQL database here. And now the user have access to all of those. Okay, so what you need to do, first thing on the Monday, figure out if your environment has any Canvas Power Apps that are using SQL connection by using Center of Excellence Toolkit, for example, and then check out if those apps use these old implicitly shared connection. And one way to do this is just start to share the app, and here in sharing screen, it says quite clearly that, okay, this app is using these old connections, and you should be aware of that. And how to fix those, there is a link where is instructions how you can fix those connections. Basically, you open the app and republish it, and then you remove the share, all the shares from the old connections. Yeah. But that's the story of implicitly shared connections. You can't do this anymore, but be aware if you have done this before. And after you have fixed those apps, they are using these new SQL Server connections, and it means that now when user opens the app, all the user will have their own copy of that connection that can be used only with that one single Canvas Power App. So they can't reuse that connection anymore. All right. The next topic is these flows with fixed run only permissions. And one thing I usually speak about, and many other consultants as well, is that Power Platform, that these Canvas apps are safe because all the users are always accessing the data with their own credentials, because we have these mechanisms of connections. And most of the time, yes, like here again, I have my Canvas app, and I have one user, and the user is accessing Dataverse with these Canvas apps. And when he opens first time the app, the connection is created, and this connection is using this user own credentials. So everything is fine and super safe. Okay. What you can do, if you like, you can create a flow with Power Automate. And with that flow, you can use for reading the database some fixed connection. So for example, my connection or some service account connection, I can do that. And how this look in practice? So here I have my Canvas app. As we see, I am reading using accounts, and I'm showing accounts here in gallery in the front page. And now my friend here is opening the app, and he can't see anything because he don't have any permissions to that account table. But what I can do, I can, for example, in screen on visible event, I can make collection, and then I run flow that populates the collections, and then I show here all the items from that collection. And what my flow is doing, the flow is getting items from the accounts table and returns them to the Canvas Power Apps. And now I can define here on that flow what are the run-only users, and I can change the value so that this action is always run with my credentials, always. And now my friend opens the app, and okay, now he can see all the accounts here. And we can, of course, extend these things so that my friend can, with his mechanism, can edit the items and can delete the items and so forth. Okay, and now somebody start to think, okay, this looks quite nice, because with this way, we don't need license for all the users. We can use one service account, and we can read, all the stuff from the database, all the Salesforce or whatever. And this looks so promising. Okay, from technical point of view, you can do that. But from licensing point of view, you can't do that. Please don't do that. Last one about Canvas Power Apps is I like to show is that kind of, if I like to do some harmful, I can. And it's again related to these connections. Here I have my innocent app, and I'm opening my app at the first time. And as always, it asks my permissions to use these connections, because the app needs those to work. And for me, always, if some app asks permissions to my Outlook, this kind of red flag for me. Because why on earth kind of business applications need to use my Outlook? Okay, let's open the app, and it shows few incidents here. Nothing special. When we go in edit mode, we notice that, okay, the Outlook is not here. We are not using the Outlook straight in our app, but instead, when the app opens, we are running some flow called get emails. And how this flow looks like, it is triggered by the Power Apps, and it reads emails from the inbox. And whose inbox is that one? Because by default, when you are triggering something from the Canvas apps, the flow, all the actions are run by connections of the end user, running user. So now I have, as a maker, access to the end user input. Because I'm a little bit greedy, I can do something like this. So when the user opens the app, the first screen, the flow is triggered, and now I'm reading his inbox, and for example, store all the emails what I get from there somewhere, and then I wait 1 day and do the same again. Because the flow can exist 28 days, the single app opening, I can actually get access to the user email for 28 days. Quite nice. Right, then we can move on to the Power Automate, and from the maker point of view. First thing first, whatever you do with Power Automate, okay, if you are doing some automations that are just for yourself, you are that kind of personal things you like to automate, it's maybe okay to use your own connections, own credentials there. But if you are doing anything else, something that is used by your team or by your department or the whole organization, then always use something else than your own connections, credentials on those flow actions. Use service accounts, or even better, if possible, use service principal. For example, with database you can, but there's plenty of connectors you can't use service principals. Then go with service accounts. And there's 2 reasons. Of course, if you use your own account everywhere, and then the time flies and you are leaving the company, then at the end, all these nice flows stop working because your account will be disabled. But the other thing is that they are your credentials, so you need to be quite careful what you are doing and when you are using those. And it leads us to next topic, that is sharing. Sharing is not always caring, I think. Here, I have my super simple flow, reading items from the SharePoint. As we see, this is using, or maybe you don't see, but I can see, it's using my connection here. And what I do next, I actually add my coworker as a co-owner for this flow. And the same thing happens if I share the flow. If the flow is not inside the solution, I can share it, but it's behaving exactly the same way. So now I'm adding co-owner for that flow, and I get some warning, and we know nobody reads it. We don't. But in that warning message, it's quite clearly says what will happen next. And it is this. Now, my friend opens the flow. I just added him as a co-owner. And what is here? He look these get items, action, and oh, it's using my connection. And even better, he can create another action for the same connection, like delete item. And still, he is using my connection. He can actually have access all the SharePoint sites. I have permissions because he's using my credentials. And if my friend now, for example, delete everything on those SharePoint lists, and it will be quite a hassle, and somebody goes to the audit log and check out who has been deleted all this item, because he was using my credentials. So please be super careful when you start to share something if you are using your own credentials. And the next one is about secrets, because when we are creating these great Power Automate flows, in many times we are using some secrets inside, like for APIs, API key or username and password, so forth. And in many cases, people are just putting those secrets on the actions. And if they are like educated, they have been turned these output input secure mechanism on. And now when I check out the run history, I can't see the secrets here because these are secure. But I see this run history. It means that I can, of course, edit the flow as well. And when I turn edit on, my secret is here, easily readable. Now, IT steps in and says, no, Timo, we have this policy. All the secrets has to be stored in Key Vault, and then they are super safe there. Okay, I put my secret to the Key Vault, and I'm reading the secret from there. And again, these inputs and outputs are secured. So when I check out the run history, I can see the secrets from there. But if I have enough permissions, I can take these on edit mode and go to settings and turn these toggle off and just wait that this is run again. And after that, I can see the secret. And this is even worse now, because here it might be that there are several secrets on the Key Vault, and with this way I can access them all. And this example works nicely if you don't have any other actions here. It will be a little bit more complex if you have like other actions and the flow start to ask, your connections for them. But with this simple, super simple flow, it works just like this. Third option to make your secret secure is using these environment variables, which is typed as a secret. And how this works, you actually configure here your environment variable, and it actually reads the secrets from the Key Vault to the database. And after that, in your flow, you can perform an unbound action. And as an outcome, it gives you the secret, and you can use it here again in your other action. And you know how this works. I just edit it and turn the secure outputs off and wait, and then I get access to that secret. And don't get me wrong, the Key Vault is the place to store your secret. But then keep in mind that in some cases, it doesn't make your flows any more secret. In the flow side, the most important thing is that who has like high permissions on that environment, because they can figure out ways how to read those. Yeah. Let's move on to the IT world. IT people, I love those. It's me after a midsummer party last year. Yeah. All right. As we notice that the most important thing in Canvas world and in the Power Automate Cloud Flows world are these connectors, because the connectors are the way access any data. So from the IT point of view, the first thing what you can do is somehow control what connectors the makers can use. because that's the way you can control a little bit what they can do on those environments. And for that, we have data loss prevention policies. And at the beginning, what we had was concept of this kind of baskets. We have two baskets, business connectors and non-business connectors. And then we can divide all those, like what they are, 1,000, 2,000 connectors. We can divide those 2,000 connectors on those two baskets. And then when Maker did, like, for example, Canvas app, and IT has put database connector to the business connectors basket, and then, for example, Google Drive connector to the non-business connector basket. In the app, I as a maker, I couldn't mix those connectors between these two baskets. So if I add database connector in my app, after that I couldn't add a Google Drive connector because they are in different baskets. And I think this, I don't know who get this idea. It was, for the customer point of view at least, it was a little bit confusing, these kind of baskets and how we maintain these baskets and how this works. And after that, we luckily get possibility in data loss prevention policies to just block connectors. So we can say that, okay, this Facebook connector, we don't use that at all. End of story. After that, what we get a little bit granularity. So now we can even block endpoints. So for example, SQL connector or HTTP connector, we can define what endpoints we can use. So for example, in our testing environment, we can only access test SQL database. In production, we can only access the production database. And now we can even block actions. So we can define that, okay, in this environment, we can use SharePoint connector, but we can't use delete action on that connection. And you can scope your policies, like you can say that, okay, this DLP policy is valid for all of the environments, or you can scope it all environments, but not these ones, or just these ones. And you can have several policies layered, so you can have kind of structure of that. But before you're doing anything, if you have not done this yet, so before doing anything, you need to do a little bit planning what you are doing with your DLP policies and how. And then, before doing anything, remind that these DLP policies need to be owned by somebody. So when it happens that, like me as a maker, came here, and then I can't do my work because of these DLP policies, there has to be somebody or some point of contact that I can ask, okay, that I have this situation now, what I should do. Should I move to some other environment, or should we actually do changes on those DLP policies? But I need to have that contact. And you can do Power Apps, single Power App, single Power Automate level exceptions of those policies. Please don't do that, because if you start to do all kind of exceptions, then end of the day, nobody knows how this, the whole thing works, because you have been, tweaking it in every places. My proposal is that at the first, keep your DLP policies quite simple, because I have seen organizations that they have done nothing, but then they start to build some super complex logic of DLP policies, and again, end of the day, nobody understands how these policies actually work. But there's always a but, and there's several buts, but I like to show one. So here I have my DLP policy, and I like to configure endpoint for the HTTP action that can be used. And here I define, okay, everything else is okay, but we can't do any calls to that endpoint. That's forbidden. And now I have my flow here, and we see that this is stopped. And the reason is that this flow violates this policy, because it's starting to access this endpoint what we just say that it's forbidden. And it's here. That's the reason we have this forbidden URL here. But if I really like to do this call, I can just move the endpoint to the variable and then use the variable here, and everything is fine. Because these DLP policies, they are not checked on runtime. They can't know, what I'm doing here. So very easy way to bypass that policy. Yeah, but still, maybe if you see something like this, maybe this is not the way to do. But if you are owning this DLP policy, it might be interesting to understand that this can be done. Next one, tenant isolation. Who knows what is it? Oh, great. Because most of the people don't know. Yeah. What this tenant isolation mean in this context is that now here, I don't want to rebuild that one. This is my own company. Here, organization A, and I have here Power Platform environment, and I have done Power Automate that reads our SharePoint with SharePoint connection. Then we have another company, whole other tenant, and we have here environment. We have kind of similar flow, and we are reading their own SharePoint there. And I, as a consultant, I have user account, proper user account, not quest account, proper user account for both of the organization. So what I can do, I can, in my home organization, I can, in my flow, I can create new connection that actually reads data from that company SharePoint. And because I have account here also, I can do vice versa. So I can read from here, I can read the SharePoint. And by default, this is allowed. And this is something like IT people are screaming when they understand that this can be done. And of course, those DLP policies can't do anything because we can't forbid SharePoint because we are using SharePoint here, just right way. And these connections from my home tenant point of view, this is called inbound connection, and this is called outbound connection. And if you like, you can forbid this. So you can go to the Power Platform Admin Center and just turn this tenant isolation property on. And after that, all those cross-tenant connections are forbidden. And you can, after that, you can have 50 exceptions. So you can tell that, okay, with this company, I allow inbound connections. But keep in mind that it takes two for the tango. So if here, this organization has this tenant isolation on, I can do from here anything, because if I allowed everything, these are not working because this one is forbidden those cross-tenant connections. So you need to negotiate with that organization if you like to open those. But there's always a but. And this one is related to the Quest user, because I have done quite many apps that use datawares that are used by Quest users. And this tenant isolation is a little bit problematic with those. because here I have my beautiful Canvas app, and I'm reading accounts. I'm showing accounts here in my grid. And then I share this Canvas app to the Quest user. Here, this is me from another tenant as a Quest in that tenant. And I can see all these accounts because, of course, I have proper license for my Quest user on that tenant, and I have proper security role to read those accounts. Everything works fine. But now I just add button here in my app, and what happens when I click that button? I trigger a flow that does exactly the same thing. It reads accounts from accounts table. And now, when I run this app as the same Quest user, I get this consent dialog that I need to fix my connections. All right, I hit that one. I log in, and then I get quite nice error. And what it says in error, it says that signing in failed due to tenant isolation policy. And what's happening now? It's actually bug in authentication flow on the flow side. So they mess up that. I should have be able to do that, but now it's somehow things that I am actually doing cross-tenant connection that I'm not, because I'm a Quest user, I'm working inside that same tenant. And if you need to do that, if you need to have that flow that is triggered from the Canvas app accessing the database, for example, the workaround today is that you need to have first simple flow that is triggered from the Power Apps, and then you have child flow, and you move everything to that child flow. And you need to run all the database actions by predefined connection, not by the end user connection. But that's the way you can do that for now. Ooh, Power Platform security model, and this is more, how I put this. Companies I work with, in many cases, the people who runs the Power Platform environment have zero experience about the dynamics. And it might be a little bit problematic, because for those guys, the whole Power Platform security model, for example, might be a little bit confusing because it's all new. And what I think, if you are running this kind of environment, kind of basic understanding about the security principles might be good to know. And just one example I like to show you, and this is a real example from one of my customers. Okay, of course the application has been changed, but the case is the same. So I have here a model-driven app for updating information about dogs. Yeah, quite simple app, no emojis, sorry for that. And this app is running in my production environment, and my friend here have this simple security role, pets user, and with this role he get access to that dog table, nothing else. And then my friend has app opener security role just for opening that model-driven app. And now my friend, when he opens the make.powerapps.com, he can't, of course, see my production environment here because he don't have any kind of maker permissions on that environment. But he has, of course, maker role for my default environment. And what my friend can now do, he can create Power Automate on my default environment, and he can use this, for example, add a new row in a selected environment action. And what we have here, my production environment. Okay. My friend checked that one. Now he can browse all the tables from my production environment that he actually shouldn't have any kind of access, but that's running that app. He can pick my super secret table here, and he can see all, or he can see all the columns. I have this super secret column name here. And this might be problematic because, for example, if I have table called layoffs 2025, for example, it might be a little bit scary if people can read those tables. And there might be column names as well that indicates kind of criteria for those layoffs, for example. And this was case that my customer was a little bit scared. And how this can happen? And the reason is, of course, is that app opener role, because for using more than an app, you need read access for the table entity. And for that reason, my friend here can read all the table names and all the column names for my production environment. And the reason is that he used one single multi-event app for that environment. And of course, this shouldn't be a problem, because if you have something this confidential, you should have separate environment for these tables and run those. But for example, now customers are quite heavily using all kinds of shared environment. And this can be a problem with those shared environments, because user can have quite a lot visibility of those environments. Even the IT people don't, think that they might have. How much time we have? Oh, 10 minutes more. After all this rant I have been speaking here, what I think, is this Power Platform secure? What I think. And I like to think the security this way. If I need a mobile application as a customer, and I know the app can be built like Canvas apps, and of course it can be built from the scratch with any tool you can use. So which one I trust more to give this job? Some random developer from the street, or some random maker from the street? And what I think, I would trust more with these guys here. And the reason is that because we are working with low code platform, there's way less things they can mess up. They need to use these connections provided by Microsoft. They need to use authentication provided by Microsoft. Every mechanism is updated all the time by the Microsoft. By here, he can start screwing up from the beginning. He can, bypass the whole authentication. Oh, I don't want to implement that one. Or he can use some super old libraries from somewhere. So there are way more things he can start to mess up, I think. And the second thing is that when they are ready, many organizations, they don't have their own developers. So there's nobody inside who can check out what he has done. But with the Power Platform, I have plenty of customers. They have quite capable makers there, and their own makers can easily check out on the high level what they have done, what kind of connections they have been using, what flow they're running, what the solution is doing in higher level. Yeah. Last slide. If you need to remember 4 things from this presentation. First, from technical point of view, I think Power Platform is safe enough for most of the customers. Remember that these connections, they are credentials. So be careful where you use those, and be super careful when you start to share your connections, because you are sharing your credentials. Be careful about who has system customizer permissions in your environment, because if there are people with high permissions, they can do a lot. And the last one, you should have at least basic understanding about Power Platform security model, because without that, you are kind of blind and you might do some stupid things on your environment. Thank you. And now, if you have learned at least one new thing, raise your hand. Yeah. Thank you, mission complete. And next we have, do we have some break now? Yeah, we can continue.
He has had some minor issues, let's say. So I'm gonna stop this recording for